All right, so here's the last lecture I'm doing for this section on prehistory, okay? So we were just talking about agricultural society, the agricultural revolution, and patriarchy versus matriarchy. And so now we're going to talk about the emergence of complex societies. We have some of the oldest societies and civilizations in remember I talked about West Asia, Middle East, Near East. I'm just going to use the term Middle East because you're most familiar with it, okay? When referring to this part of the world. So Jericho in Palestine. We had active trade, many huts, defensive wall made, and the defensive wall is, it was famous for its wall through a biblical story, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. And then you have Çatalhöyük, Turkey, and something looking similar, like these cities kind of squished together here, the way you're seeing them. I can't get it to work right. Oh, here it is. So I'll just play this right now for you. And here's a song about the Battle of Jericho. It's a famous hymn. Let's see here. All right, so that's all I was going to play for that part. Since my name is Joshua, my first name, I remember older people always singing to me that song in church. Say, "Oh, Joshua fit the Battle of Jericho." So there's this the famous story in the Bible about a battle where the walls, there was a prostitute or some lady who let in some of the ancient Israelite spies that were spying out the land into her home. And when the soldiers said, "Are there spies here? Where'd they go?" She goes, "I think they went the other way," and she saved them. So then what happens is that because of this kindness and collaborating with the people who are ready to destroy her town, God gives her a blessing, and there is a kind of miraculous battle where the armies of Joshua march around that fortified city, like we saw here, right? And this is kind of showing this depiction here. The troops surround and they blow the trumpets several times, and the walls come tumbling down, except for the woman who helped protect the spies coming in of God's chosen people. So the story goes. Okay, so I just thought I would show you how modern culture and ancient sites merge together. Okay, and so again, going back to the idea of cities, I'm just kind of talking. Let's start with here. We're talking about near Tigris and Euphrates, and then the Nile, and you had. Obviously, water is important. So, where there's water, there'd be people and civilizations that emerged around them. I think we'll be able to talk more about that in detail as well. I thought I would just kind of show an interesting section here from the Bible where there was this story it tells about cities being built. Here it says, Cain made love to his wife. She became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. But there's always that question of where he got his wife from, since there was just Adam, Eve, and his brothers and sisters, and then he sent off. So maybe that was his sister, I guess. Anyways, Cain was then building a city, and he named it after his son Enoch. Lamech married two women, one named Ada and the other Zillah. Ada gave birth to Jabal. He was then father to those who live in tents and raise livestock. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all who played string instruments and pipes. Zillah also had a son, Tubal-Cain, who forged all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron. Tubal-Cain's sister was Naamah. So what's interesting about this is the Bible is one of several different stories that comes up with an idea about the emergence of civilization. And here, at least the writer, taking it from a historical approach, the writer of this text conceived of the origins, at least, regardless of whether this is actual history or not, of things that you see in city life emerging and having a tradition that goes back to certain people. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of show you. So early states and civilizations that emerge in river valleys, we have between 4,000 and 2,000. And again, it's no coincidence that you have all these major civilizations to develop around places that there's water, which makes life sustainable. And without water, humans don't live. This is, of course, again, I'll keep repeating, this is what the crisis of California is going through. And, farmers need water. People need water. Okay. Now, so let's clarify the language here. We talk about states and civilization. States are territorial entities ruled by a central government. Okay. And civilizations are what? We talk about very large, complex society. When I say complex, where there's taxes, money, right? You have, if you think about it, you pull out your money. What does it mean? It says paper. It has symbolic value. It says that this means something. It's backed by something, right? And so that's complex. It's complex, the idea, following a certain amount of clocks in unison, or maybe a time to pray, or whatever. Of course, they didn't have, and they would have different types of ways of telling the time. But civilization is when things are organized, usually through the powerful state, and they have widely shared or similar customs, institutions, and beliefs, and we see these develop out of, I put West Asia, I should say, Middle East, North Africa, India, and China. We'll be learning much more about them later on. Here's just a little breakdown of some of the timelines that we went over. And I just wanted to end this lecture of this section with two different poems, okay? And they're not linked to this topic per se, but I just want you to reflect when we talked about the idea of prehistory or this from the past. Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard by Thomas Gray. The line I really like, if we go down here, he says, "Some mute and glorious Milton here may rest, some Cromwell guiltless of his country's blood." Now, what he's basically saying is he's looking out at these graves, and he's seeing them, and he's saying, what inglorious Milton here, what a famous poet, what poet is out here? What person are here that we don't know about? We know about Milton, we know about Cromwell, but what about these people in this graveyard? He reflected upon that, and I think this is how I kind of look at this, like any history, but especially prehistory, is we know about so many people now. Think about musicians that and all these political figures that are famous, are infamous. Alexander the Great, Caesar, Hitler, George Washington. Who are these people? Existed in prehistory that we don't know about. Okay, and then I just thought I would end with this great poem by Bukowski. He's a popular poet. He's dead now, but he says, "Sometimes when you get the blues, there's a reason." And it says, "It only takes 6 or 8 inept political leaders, or 8 or 10 artsy-fartsy writers, composers, and painters to set the natural course of human progress back 50 years or more, which may not seem like much to you, but it's over half your lifetime, during which time you're not going to be able to hear, see, read, or feel that necessary gift of great art which otherwise you could have experienced, which may not seem tragic to you, but sometimes perhaps when you're not feeling so good at night or in the morning or at noon, maybe what you feel that's lacking is what should be there for you but is not. And I don't mean a blonde in sheer pantyhose. I'm talking about what gnaws at your guts even when she's there." And the reason really I wanted to end on that is I like his point about how time can seem so short, but it's a lifetime for us. And I guess what I'm trying to reflect upon is we've just covered thousands of years, and we're going to go through this class, centuries. And yet for human beings, right, it seems old to us, the 19th century. And yet, I mean, think about how vast time is, and the things that we get or don't get from that. So that's how I'm going to end this lecture, and we'll move on to the next section.